What is up, everybody, and welcome to a very special edition of Collection Commentary. In today's video, we are going to be taking the Grimsmo Norseman and putting it to the ultimate test. I reached out to the community on Reddit, Instagram, and YouTube asking for suggestions from followers of the channel and from frequenters of those other forms of social media to find out what kind of tests they would like to see the Norseman put up against. It's no secret that the Norseman is a grail knife for many, and therefore, because of the extraordinarily ballooned secondary market price of these knives and just their general rarity overall, these tend not to be used and abused the way some other knives perhaps are. Now, that's not to say that you can't find videos out there of people doing cutting tests and stuff like that with the knife. You certainly can, but it is fairly rare, and because I won this knife in a raffle and therefore don't have the financial connection to the knife that most people do, I really wanted to take the rare opportunity to do some crazy stuff with the Norseman and really put it to the test. So in asking the community for those suggestions, we got a nice mix of some goofy or entertaining suggestions mixed in with genuine objective suggestions as well. So it's going to be a nice mix of fun and overview for the knife, and so I'm really excited. I really had a lot of fun making this video. Thank you to everybody who participated, and we're going to start by doing talking about just a couple of things about the knife, and then we'll kind of jump into the community suggestions. So the first thing that I want to do real quick, just for those of you who maybe aren't as familiar with the Norseman, you can get a little bit of a size comparison. We'll get some we'll get the weight of the knife going here, just so you guys have an idea of some of the specs of the knife that ultimately ended up getting tested in this video. So you can see it absolutely dwarfs a Rat 2. It's a fairly large knife. It's borderline pocket sword. It's not quite as big as something like a Bodega, but it's definitely up there. It remains fairly thin. It's even thinner than the PM2, which makes it a reasonable knife for EDC, but you can see based on length, it does have about 1/8 of an inch on the PM2 in terms of length based on what I can see from this angle, and then generally it maintains a lot of the same size and shape, except for, of course, in the blade. So it's on the bigger side, but it's not obnoxiously large. Let's go ahead and check out how the knife does in a weight test. Go ahead and put the scale down here, and let's find out. So at 4.9 ounces, it definitely is on the heavier side for that kind of 3.5 to 4.5 ounce range that I generally talk about that people are interested in with their EDC knives. It honestly doesn't feel all that heavy, but a lack of internal milling with these two giant tie slabs is going to be what's mainly contributing to that weight. They have opted for standoffs on this knife, which helps bring the weight down a little bit. I would imagine a backspacer would have pushed this well into the 5-ounce range. So at 4.9, it's definitely kind of getting over that hill for a lot of people's general EDC if you were to just have like one knife that you really wanted to be functional, but it's not extraordinarily overweighted. So definitely reasonable, but definitely something to consider as well. So there were a couple things that I wanted to note that people might not realize if you haven't tried one of these knives. The first thing that I really enjoy is that the edges on the blade are all super rounded to an extreme degree, and so all throughout the blade spine and then all up through here on the choil, or past the choil and up through the flipper tab, is all very rounded off. And it just gives the knife a premium feeling. It's really nice to touch, something a little bit more unique. Typically, I don't like the rounded spines because usually that means that they don't do jimping. I think a good example of that, sorry, I'll reach over here. Good example of that is the Riate Future. It has a rounded spine, which I really enjoy from an aesthetic and from a feel perspective, but they eliminated the potential for jimping here, which means that you really have no grip for your thumb up on the spine there. Now, the Norseman managed to not have that failure, and they did get some jimping in there. So you both get the pleasurableness of this rounded spine while also getting the functionality of some jimping, even if this jimping is a little bit too rounded to be super, super effective. But that's just something that's really comfortable about the knife that I thought you might find interesting. Something else that people don't realize is that there's a good amount of internal work to these knives. Not as quite as beautiful as like internal milling on a Shirogorov, but they do the Grimsmo logo pretty large on the inside. And this particular knife is signed by both John and Eric. So I'll go ahead and show you guys a picture of the interior, and then something else that I wanted to note while I do so is that the over travel stop is an internally mounted disc. And here, I'll go ahead and show you the photo so you can see that. So it's pretty cool. They've got a lot going on the interior, and that's something that I can appreciate. I like it when you know, you disassemble a knife and you get to find little things like that. So that's pretty cool. All right, so moving forward, let's go ahead and jump into the suggestions. First up is going to be from Reddit user nreyes238, who asks, talk about the steps in the blade. This was something that came up a few times on Reddit, and I know a lot of people are interested in these CNC steps in the Norseman blade. Try to show you without hitting the mic. So they actually CNC these little steps. And from, you know, looking at videos and pictures and stuff, you might get the impression that they would influence your ability to slice through things because it's not, you know, a perfect hollow grind. It has these steps in there. So the way I would characterize it is you can feel the steps, but they are so mild that not only will it not influence your ability to cut, but you almost can't even feel them. So the fact is, if you run your nail along, you can feel it, but it doesn't feel like individual steps. It's actually a lot more smoothed out than you might imagine. So if you think about normal steps with 90-degree angles, you know, you get like this kind of pattern. And what we're really seeing here is more of like just like a continuous S-curve on a really, really mild scale, a very flattened out scale. So you actually very much don't feel it. And even with your nail, you can't really feel individual steps. I mean, you can if you super focus on it hard, but really it just feels like more of a ripple than anything else. So definitely not a concern if you're thinking about your slicing path, but definitely something that's a little bit neat and a little bit unique on a knife that is otherwise pretty special in and of itself. The next suggestion comes from Instagram. It is actually Epic Snuggle Bunny, who has an excellent knife review channel, so go ahead and check him out. And he simply states, "May the force be with you." The next suggestion comes from Instagram as well. It's going to be @user_slayer. This is one of my longtime knife friends who has produced some loaners for us in the past. So I was really excited to be able to get his suggestion. And that is going to be, how fast can it cut a box into bits? The next suggestion comes to us from Reddit, and it is going to be user Wazzy McWazzle, and he simply asks, will it blend? Our next suggestion comes from Instagram as well. It is Bold City, user at Bold City. That's actually my friend Steve, another longtime follower. So thank you, Steve, for giving us a suggestion, which is how well will it function as a throwing knife? Our next suggestion coming from Instagram user BenderJ85. Bender actually sold me my Shirogorov 95, and he is a professional sharpener who manages to put what he calls a bender edge on knives. And I gotta tell you, when I got that Shirogorov from him, it had a fresh sharpening, and it was one of the sharpest knives I've ever come across. So definitely check out his Instagram here, and you will be able to get knives sharpened by him professionally, and he has super reasonable prices, so definitely go check him out. But Bender simply asks, will it baton? The next suggestion comes from Reddit user Avocado Legs, who wants to know how much is too much. A lot of people asked about the price and to mention the price. I'm sure many of you are already familiar with the fact that this Norseman sold brand new for something around $700, and they have appreciated to more than double and in some cases triple the cost. A lot of these are selling on the secondary market right now for anywhere between $1,100 and $1,600, and so they have one of the biggest market bubbles right now of any knife, really, that I'm familiar with in the market. Not to say that there aren't other bubbles as well, but this is definitely one of the most extreme. And so, you know, it's fair to ask, how much is too much? At what point is this knife still objectively worth the cost that people are asking for? You know, and is spending $1,500 on it a ripoff, or, you know, is it a $1,500 knife that just is sold at an extraordinarily reasonable price from the maker? This is obviously a tough question to answer. It's not really one of those things where what I say is going to be correct or incorrect. It's kind of, you know, value is a tough thing to discuss because value is in the eye of the beholder. It's obvious that there's tons of people out there who think that no knife is worth more than $100. You can, if you actually watch Nick Shabazz's recent video about how he's kind of quote-unquote done with custom knives, I read through the comment section on that, and there were so many people that were like, I just don't get why you would ever spend that much money. It doesn't make any sense. Which, again, the difference between a custom knife or even a high-end production knife like a $900 Shirogorov, it's a different world. You know, it's like the world of watches. You can go buy a Timex for $30 and it will tell time, and that's all you need in regards to watches. But I have friends that have $8,000 Rolexes because reasons. And so again, value is really tough. So it's hard for me to say really what this knife is worth. I can tell you what this knife is worth to me. However, having many fancy customs and having knives as expensive as $1,500 table price in my collection, you know, it's up there. I don't really think it's a $1,500 knife. It has a $1,500 action. I'll give it that. But from the perspective of being 2 slabs of titanium and all CNC work except for, you know, the hand finishing that Eric does, no, it's not worth $1,500, I don't think. If I was presented with the opportunity to buy a Norseman in a configuration that I enjoyed, knowing what I know now, I think I would go up to about $1,100 right around 1,100 bucks. If it's like a Damasteel blade or something, we're obviously getting into other territory, but just kind of like your kind of run-of-the-mill Norseman, I think stops being worth the price somewhere around the $1,100 mark. I'm going to be completely frank and let you all know that I'm definitely pulling that number out of my ass, right? It's all relative, but right around $1,100 is where I feel comfortable, because I feel like a lot of the value in this knife comes from the action that is only really available on Grimsmo's and a select few other knives that I've encountered in my time. You know, that really goes to the knife closing against gravity, which is something we'll take a look at in a bit. But the only other knives I've really seen manage to do that, other than the Norseman and Rask, are like one Larevo Knives Tribeca at Blade Show had Damasteel and it shut against gravity. It's pretty rare, guys. Like it's a hard thing to achieve. So it definitely has a super special action that really is unique to probably anything else you've tried. Even Mike Nguyen knives do a good job of that, but yeah, it's pretty freaking rare. So there's definitely value there. I will say, again, the whole knife is contoured very well, finished very well. It is a super high quality custom. So right up to about 1,100 bucks is where I feel that it's worth it. And then beyond that, I can't really justify it because of how much work is done by machine and everything. My opinion is that in these higher price points, look, I don't think using a CNC machine to make your knife is bad. I don't think that that inherently takes away from the value of a knife. What I do think is that, you know, the value of a knife is based on a few things. It's materials, how long it took to make the knife, and then just the overall quality. And for me, when I pay over $1,000 for something, I generally want to know that, you know, a lot of what I'm paying for is like the handwork and the handmadeness of the knife. And so that's not to say that this being lots of CNC work takes away from the knife, because there's great makers that also use CNC machines. Even Andre Thorburn uses water jets and CNC. So I don't think that that like inherently makes the knife worth any less than any other custom that was handmade. I just, for me personally, after a certain point, I'm kind of like, what I want to be paying for is the amount of hours spent on the knife. And this knife did not have as many hours put into it, I don't think anyway, as some of the other fully handmade customs that I'm familiar with. So 1,100 feels right about right for me. But you know, it's a fantastic knife, and I wouldn't think somebody'd be stupid for paying $2,000 for this if it was everything that they wanted and more. I would not look down on them for that. And then the fact that the brothers only charge $700 for one is very respectful. I think that's a pretty fair number from Maker, considering the amount of hours into each knife and the level of detail that the knife holds. 700, 800, 900, those feel like fair numbers to me from Maker. And then I could see paying up to 1,100 secondary just because of the overall rarity of the knife. So I hope that helps answer that question a little bit for you guys. I know I've rambled a little bit, but I think that that was a really important one to focus on. And so yeah, I don't quite think it's worth as much as $1,500. Just out of the well, whatever. I've said everything I have to say, but it's definitely up there. It's a fantastic knife. It's not totally mind-boggling and ridiculous that the knife has appreciated to that level. I can understand why. The next suggestion comes to us from Reddit as well, user Pine Straw, who simply says, rope test. So the first thing that we need to do is get the rope cut out of its packaging. Now, there's something that I want to note for you guys here, which is that I didn't really pay attention to the rope before I bought it. I bought it online, so I didn't get a chance to feel it. I just ordered the rope that was half an inch thick, and it turned out to be like a plastic rope. So here's an image of the type of rope that it is. So in fairness to the knife here, this is not normal rope, and the knife didn't do so well against the rope, which is partially my fault for just kind of getting something that maybe isn't the easiest thing to cut through. So having said that, let's go ahead and check out how the knife performs. Now you can see here I am trying to kind of roll the front edge of the knife, and it's not really doing much to the rope at all. It's pretty thick behind the edge there with the Tonto, and I had seen somebody kind of roll cut some paracord, so I thought that I might be able to do that with the rope. It is getting through the rope just a little bit, but mostly just chewing away at it more than cutting it. You can see with some effort and some sawing force that we do eventually get through the rope. But ultimately the knife isn't the best for this particular task with this particular type of rope. You can see with rolling the Tonto edge, it does manage to make it through a bit of the rope at this point, but still not super effective. So in fairness to the knife, I did go ahead and get some paracord so we can test against some paracord as well. Now, another thing worth noting is that I came back and did this paracord test after every other test that you see in this video. So this was the very last thing that the edge went up against, and so this knife had cut through a ton of cardboard, had struggled through cutting plastic rope, had cut through fruit and everything like that up to this point. And so you can see that we are able to kind of roll cut the Tonto edge through about 4 sections of paracord, though it does take some effort. In a previous video that I had seen with somebody else doing an edge retention test, they were able to roll cut through the paracord fairly easily. So, you know, again, with this being towards the end of the edge retention tests, or being the very end of it, it's struggled a little bit more compared to some of the other tests, but it still does obviously roll cut paracord fairly well. And then of course the flat or the regular recurve edge of the knife cuts extraordinarily well. And our final community suggestion comes from Instagram as well, and that is going to be African Custom Knives. Now, if you guys follow the channel at all, you know that African Custom Knives is an excellent dealer of South African knives, and I absolutely love those guys. Nathan and Nolan, they're excellent. They are brothers. They're super fun to work with. They're great dudes, and they left a comment on Instagram, which was my absolute favorite one. I saved the best for last, which is, how does the knife perform in real life Fruit Ninja? Alright, and something else that I wanted to review with you guys is the action of the knife. So I put together a little clip comparing it to some of the greatest actions in my collection, which would be my Thorburn L36M and my Shirogorov 95 frag pattern. So let's go ahead and jump into that clip and just kind of see what I mean by the knife closing against gravity. So what I wanted to do here, guys, was show you some of the differences between the closing action on my Thorburn L36, my Shiro 95, and the Norseman. So really just kind of pay attention to the angle that I'm holding the knife and how much effort I'm actually putting into closing it. And as we get up to the Norseman, you'll actually see that I'm able to hold the knife at almost a 45-degree angle, and really not even shaking the knife. The blade swings all the way closed up away from the gravitational pull, which is what really separates the Grimsmo action from many other actions. And again, there's been only a couple other knives outside of Grimsmo knives that I've ever handled that are capable of this kind of closing action. It's really impressive. So the last thing to do really is, after having done all of those tests on the edge, we want to see if it still pops hairs. So let's go ahead and find out. And looks like the answer is pretty much no. Now, I'm not super familiar with the RWL 34 steel, but it seems that the edge retention doesn't quite hold up to the test that we put the knife up against. So maybe that answers some questions for you guys in terms of how well the knife holds up. Obviously, we cut a lot of stuff, and so the knife started out super sharp with that factory edge, and it performed extraordinarily well. But having done all of that, I think the rope test definitely did the knife in a little bit with the edge, and you're seeing that it is no longer popping hairs. So that's what it looks like in terms of edge retention. Thank you to everyone so much for watching and for submitting your suggestions. Doing this community video was super fun. Please let me know below if you guys enjoyed this, if you thought that it was fun or interesting, and if there's anything that I missed that you would maybe like to see in an update video or something like that. But thank you so much, guys, for watching. If you would like to see other awesome videos, please subscribe, and if you'd like to see amazing pictures of this Norseman and other beautiful knives, you can do so by following me on Instagram at tovarishworks. If you would like to send me a lovely loaner like many have in the past, you can do so by emailing me at tovarishworks@gmail.com. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and I will see you next time.